From Ayanokoji's shining knight in armor to a girl who thinks he's a literal god, Season 4 of Classroom of the Elite is going to introduce the craziest band of female characters we've seen yet. And today, we're gonna rank all of them based on how good their story is and all their fun interactions with Ayanokoji. And we're gonna kick things off with an honorable mention, Yamamura Miki, because I feel so bad for her. Listen, if you think being Ayanokoji's pawn is bad, let me tell you, Arisu is a million times worse. Miki is one of her spies, and she's really good at being a spy because she's one of those wallflower characters who no one notices. But Arisu makes her do the most horrendous stuff, like camping outside the men's washroom to collect information. I mean, I just gotta ask, what type of information are we gathering here? We're not gonna see much of Miki this season, likely just a mention, but she does become important later on. And taking the number 5 spot is Himeno, because together with Ayanokoji, they kick off one of the most important plots in the second year, the revolution in Ichinose's class. So for some context, the biggest event in Season 4 is gonna be the second year island exam. And following that, we're gonna get a slice of life episode, but this time on the cruise ship. And Ayanokoji will get an invite to a party organized by the girls in Class B. On the surface, the reason is because he helped one of their classmates, but the girls are sneaky. They know Ichinose has a crush on him, and that's the entire reason for this going down. And Ayanokoji meets Himeno at this party. Right away, you're gonna notice how much Himeno's style stands out from everybody else in her class, and that isn't by accident. Because when it comes to the girls, Horikita and Ichinose's class are polar opposites. We explored a lot of this through Kei's arc because when she first arrived to the school, she latched onto Hirata to take control of the girls in her class. And she had to, because the girls in Class D were mean, they were bullies. In fact, the anime cut out this big scene where Sato comes together with Ike, Yamauchi, and Sudo to bully Horikita. But in Ichinose's class, they're all angels. Ayanokoji describes the environment as soft and fluffy. But that's suffocating for anyone who doesn't fit in, like Himeno. In fact, Himeno and Ayanokoji are twins because neither can stand the environment. They both excuse themselves, but out on the deck, Ayanokoji confronts Himeno, peeling back the layers. And by that, I mean he blackmails her. He basically walks up to her and is like, if you don't want to talk to me, I'm gonna tell Ichinose that you faked a headache to get out. But surprisingly enough, Himeno fights back because everyone at the party was like, oh, look at Ayanokoji, he's such a saint. But to Himeno, he has a nasty personality. And this is the moment where Ayanokoji deems Himeno vital for Ichinose's class. Because in his mind, the next step for them is to find people who can speak up against the status quo. And Himeno looks like a person who has the courage to do so. We're probably going to end up seeing the scene at the end of the season, but it's a spark for a lot of things to come. Also, if you haven't noticed, we're going to be talking about the story of these characters, so there's going to be major spoilers up ahead. Okay, so the number 4 spot goes to Tsubaki, and when it comes to the first year girls, Classroom of the Elite does something really interesting. Each one of them either mimics a part of Ayanokoji's story or his personality, and most importantly, the tactics that he uses. So we have this really fun environment where we get to see Ayanokoji dismantle his own tricks. Let me give you a bit of context for this. The first exam that we're going to see in Season 4 is the partner exam. Basically, first and second year students have to team up in order to take a written exam. They pass or fail based on their combined score. If the first years fail, they lose some points, but for the second years, it's expulsion, and Ayanokoji is in the most trouble we've ever seen him. Because on top of this exam, Ayanokoji is looking for the White Room Enforcer, the student Tsukishiro enrolled, in order to expel him as part of their deal. And on top of even that, Nagumo issued a special exam where he put a 20 million point bounty on Ayanokoji's head and gave it to a select few first years who can take him out. And in the middle of all of this, Tsubaki and her classmate Utamiya approach Ayanokoji. Utamiya takes the lead because they are in trouble. Tsubaki procrastinated until the last second on finding a partner, so time's running out. So he dragged Tsubaki with him in the hopes of finding a partner, and he reached out to Ayanokoji because both of them share a similar academic rating. The whole vibe of the situation is that Utamiya wants to help out his classmate who frankly couldn't care less, because she barely looked at Ayanokoji throughout their entire conversation. But from Ayanokoji's point of view, this was perfect. As he says, objectively speaking, there wasn't even a single reason for me to reject their offer. But he does, because Tsubaki tries to pull on him what he pulled on Ruin throughout the entirety of the first year. There's a hidden plot between Ayanokoji and Ruin where Ayanokoji convinces Ruin that Hirata was the mastermind and not him. He did this by feeding Ruin false information, like for example when Ayanokoji and Yukimura catch Manabe bullying Kei. Ruin goes like, oh, X is someone who likes to hide in the shadow and use pawns. Since Ayanokoji showed up, he can't be X. And Tsubaki right here tried to pull the same stunt because she's acting all aloof and like she doesn't care. But in reality, she's the mastermind who engineered the entire interaction. She literally counted down the days, waiting until it was the perfect time to reach out. She made it seem like the entire thing was Utamiya's idea, coaching him on how to act and only chiming in when it's absolutely necessary. However, Ayanokoji saw right through it by probing them. Tsubaki did her job well, but Utamiya couldn't keep up. There's this really interesting moment where Ayanokoji turns down their offer, saying he already has a partner in mind. It's a complete lie, but they don't know, and Tsubaki makes the right decision by backing off at that moment. As Ayanokoji explains, if this was enough to make them back down, then the two of them were most likely innocent. However, Utamiya oversteps, right away giving away the game and making them suspicious. And the reason Tsubaki had to use Utamiya is because she's bad at socializing and has very few people she can trust. In just one simple scene, we get to see her strengths, her weaknesses, and as a strategist, how she operates. And let me tell you, when it comes to things like strength, that's an easy one to show. Look at the introduction for another character, Hosen. He just comes in, he just beats a bunch of people up and leaves. You don't have to sell me on how strong Hosen is, I can see it. But intelligence is a completely different game. You can do things like, oh look, this character got a high mark on a test. And I'm like, alright, cool, but that's also kind of boring. What I love about showing intelligence is when we have these verbal boxing matches that go back and forth, where every single line has meaning because it's one step closer to deceiving the other person. And rereading the conversation, you always take away something new, or in the rare occasions, it completely changes the way you saw something before. Or if you're a dummy like me, you can just wait until Ayanokoji gives you all the answers. We have a few of these conversations with Tsubaki and all of them are A+. And the beauty here is that Tsubaki and Ruin's arc are consistent if you don't remember. Trust is the reason why Ruin lost. It's what Ayanokoji used as leverage to beat him, and later on, it's also what Ayanokoji uses to beat Tsubaki. All the while giving us a scene where we get to see how much Ruin has grown since his showdown, wrapping it all up in a nice little bow, and that's why Tsubaki gets the number 4 spot. Okay, so at the number 3 spot, we have Kiryuuin, and I'm gonna admit it, I completely fell for it. I had the wool pulled over my eyes. Because when you first see Kiryuuin, you make a snap judgment because she's introduced as the female Koenji. She does whatever she wants, she doesn't care about Class A, and she has the utmost confidence in herself. There's this hilarious moment in the books where people hurl insults at her and she just takes it all as compliments. And she's obviously aura farming to the max. Just look at this illustration of her together with Ayanokoji when they're about to have a tag team fight. All of these moments are going to be amazing, but that's not the reason why she's up here for me. What made me fall in love with Kiryuuin is just one scene, and it's a casual conversation with Ayanokoji, but it ends up completely stealing the moment, revealing some deep themes about both characters. Because when you dig deep into Kiryuuin, you realize she's nothing like Koenji. In fact, she's the exact opposite. Let's keep it a stack. Koenji is wearing a mask. He says he doesn't care about Class A, but behind the scenes, he's pulling all the strings to make sure he does graduate from Class A. We saw this at the mixed training camp. Koenji looks like a character who's completely divorced from consequences, but in fact, he may be the one most tied to them. Because it's heavily implied that there's some sort of deal between him and his father where if he doesn't graduate from Class A, there are going to be consequences. And Kiryuuin similarly comes from a privileged background. If her grandfather gave the word, she can go to any school she wants or do any job she wants. But she came here to abandon the family name, to get rid of the shackles, and to make it on her own. That's why for her, graduating from Class A doesn't matter because she has the confidence that she will make it on her own abilities. Kiryuuin's entire journey is about escaping the clutches of her family. So if you ask me, that's way more like Ayanokoji than it is like Koenji. Ayanokoji even admits it. In a way, it was similar to my thoughts when I first entered this school. Whether my class rank went up or down, didn't matter. I would continue living for my own freedom. However, in their conversation, there was one line that really got to me. I don't regret my actions the past 3 years. I've lived as I pleased. There was a slight hesitation in her voice as she declared her conviction. Nevertheless, I want to try to see myself choosing something other than just chasing freedom. Throughout the story, Kiryuuin is described as this rebel who has complete confidence in herself. But here we see a rare moment of vulnerability where Kiryuuin goes like, yeah, I spent my entire life chasing freedom and maybe I'm wrong. Brilliant writing showing us that behind her persona, she's just another person like us trying to figure things out. And what makes this moment truly special is how it allows Ayanokoji to reflect. Because at the end of the conversation, Kiryuuin says that there's a chance they might meet in the real world. And Ayanokoji goes, to meet again somewhere, huh? That future would likely never come. But if such a future existed, no, I'll discard that thought. There was no significance in such far-fetched fantasies. Now I was free to live my life in this moment. That alone was enough. The whole story of Classroom of the Elite is about diving deep into Ayanokoji's mind. We're biased because 99% of the time, we see the entire story through him. So other characters are often used to reflect things that we can't see because Ayanokoji can't see them as well. And this moment reflects an impending reality that Ayanokoji very rarely puts into words. All the students here, they can go about life, stumble, fail, try again, and they have real, genuine freedom. But for Ayanokoji, this time, this short moment in the entirety of his life is the only point where he'll ever have actual freedom. After graduation, his father owns him. So this chat is a reminder to make the best with the little time that he has left. And maybe that's why he's so invested in the growth of others, to vicariously live through the opportunities that he's never gonna have. And for this moment alone, I'm gonna rank Kiryuuin at number 3. And listen, I'm gonna be honest, for Tsubaki and Kiryuuin, the rankings are basically head-to-head. I couldn't put one over the other. I feel like both of them are equally as good. But that is not the case for number 1 and 2. So, at the number 2 spot, we have Ichika. And I thought about this a million times, but there's no way to talk about her properly without spoiling everything. So let's just get into it. Ichika is from the White Room and the generation right after Ayanokoji's, and without even knowing it, Ayanokoji completely changed the trajectory of our life. And that's why her intro volume is one of the best in the entire series, because she entangles the whole story in a hidden plot just to test Ayanokoji. Okay, so why does she want to do that? Well, in her generation, the scientists tried a little experiment. They used Ayanokoji's accomplishments as motivation for the kids, and while some of the kids were in complete awe or were very jealous of Ayanokoji, Ichika was a bit different. From the beginning, she questioned if the premise of the White Room could even work, and by extension, if Ayanokoji was real, or if he was real, was he even that great? So when Tsukishiro assigns Ichika the task of expelling Ayanokoji, she had her own ideas. She would test him to see if he was up to par with the idealized version in the White Room. So, being aware of both the partner exam and the bounty on Ayanokoji's head that we discussed before, Ichika came up with a plan. She scoped out the perfect partner for Ayanokoji, one who would guarantee his safety, but that would only come true if Ayanokoji can see through her plan. And this person is Hosen, a dangerous first year because one of the ways Tsukishiro could make sure Ayanokoji doesn't survive is to assign him a partner that he could take out. And an easy way to do that is to beat up Ayanokoji's partner. Remember, violence is allowed as long as you don't get caught. And then the rules dictate that Tsukishiro can assign Ayanokoji a partner. All he has to do is pick someone that scores a 0, game over. And that's why Hosen is perfect, because you can't use violence on this guy. And Ayanokoji even goes on to elaborate. From the first time I laid eyes on Hosen, I found myself thinking that if I was in any position to select whoever I wanted, then he'd be my first choice by far. Ayanokoji even goes on to elaborate that there were several reasons for this, and one of those several reasons was that Hosen is very resistant to violence. So, Ichika conspires with Hosen, promising him her share of the bounty in order to get his cooperation. Ichika then nonchalantly walks into Ayanokoji's life, promising to help his classmates by partnering with Sudo, who no one wanted to partner with because his grades are awful. But Ichika's demands are ridiculous because she convinces Horikita to have Ayanokoji cook her a meal in exchange for her cooperation. But she's not stupid. She uses this chance to probe Ayanokoji, figuring out if he had strong allies at the school. And she does this by demanding a dish that's so outside the caliber of any normal high school student that Horikita has to come up with a plan to make sure Ayanokoji can pull this off, proving that Ayanokoji does have people in the school who will help him. And by figuring out where he lives, Ichika is also able to stalk Kei and probe his relationship with her. All the while, Ichika perfects her plan because before Ayanokoji can even cook something, Ichika makes him buy a bunch of cooking-related things. But most importantly, Ichika has him buy a knife. And later on, she barges in when him and Kei are hanging out, creating a commotion to distract Ayanokoji. And during the commotion, Ichika retrieves the knife that Ayanokoji bought and hands it to Hosen. And all of this leads up to the confrontation where Hosen plans to stab himself with the knife that Ayanokoji bought. Hosen can then convincingly blame Ayanokoji for stabbing him, and exam or not, Ayanokoji will be expelled. However, Ayanokoji understood Ichika's plan and then moved his hand in the way to get stabbed. So, rather than being expelled, Ayanokoji can use the incident as leverage to force Hosen to partner with them. As Ayanokoji explains, the turn of events made things very, very convenient for him, and you can't have a character introduction better than this. And this plot is so uniquely Ichika because the way she goes about things is pure chaos. But within the chaos, you have the surgical precision of a White Room student. And this is obvious when she's able to puppeteer the perfect candidate and serve him up on a silver platter. And we've only seen this level of precision with Ayanokoji, and that's exactly why Ichika is placed so far above everyone else on the list. And now for the number 1 spot, and I'm gonna be honest with you, it wasn't even close. It's 100% Nanase, because in my opinion, she's the best character introduced in the second year. Which might come off as a bit odd because in the trailer I said Ichika was my favorite, so why isn't she number 1? Well, because in the trailer, I couldn't spoil everything, but here I can. The author takes Nanase's story in such an interesting direction, I couldn't even believe it. I spent freaking hours rereading all her sections because it was that good. The first time Ayanokoji meets Nanase is during the partner exam, and he's wary of every single first year because of his bet with Tsukishiro. And while Tsubaki and Ichika both played off their first interaction with Ayanokoji like they barely even knew him, Nanase basically stares at him as if announcing that she's suspicious. Ayanokoji even notes it. It was the same look as the one she gave me when she first arrived here. That is, an inquisitive look that seemed as though she was probing me for something. So we're like, okay, maybe she isn't from the White Room, maybe she's just a careless first year. However, their next interaction completely throws you for a loop. Ayanokoji runs into Nanase one morning and they talk about the exam, and at the end, Ayanokoji asks for her cooperation. A seemingly normal conversation, but not if you look deep. Like I said, 99% of the story is through Ayanokoji's eyes, but there are these things called short stories. Oftentimes, they show you slice of life events that don't fit into the main story, like Ayanokoji and Ibuki getting stuck in an elevator. Or you know that time when Horikita mistakenly unlocks the most powerful artifact in the Code universe. But in my opinion, the best short stories are the ones that let you see inside the mind of other characters. And we have a few of those for Nanase, and from her point of view, the seemingly normal conversation is her play at deception. She planned the entire thing. As she says, I call out to him in a natural way and make him notice me. I definitely think I managed a perfect smile. And the short story goes on and on about all the stuff she's doing to deceive Ayanokoji, how she's trying to lead him to an outcome that she wants. Alright, so hold on. If she's so seemingly smart and calculating, why does she make the dumb decision of staring at him? And as the story progresses, we see Nanase harbor a deep hatred for Ayanokoji. But mysteriously, at times, she also dons a persona like Ichinose, a morally upright student who's doing the best for her classmates, but she also ends up betraying Ayanokoji. Remember when we covered the plot where Ichika helps Hosen with the whole knife incident? Nanase took part in that. She helped Hosen lure Ayanokoji into that situation. But at the last moment, she also threw herself at harm's way in order to protect him. What is she thinking? Why are her actions so contradictory? In the novels, is presented as if she has two different personalities. And the most interesting hint is in the way she speaks, because Japanese has pronouns that have gendered flares. For example, watashi is gender neutral / feminine, while boku is more masculine. And Nanase mistakenly refers herself with the more masculine pronoun from time to time. And during the second year island exam, we see why that's relevant. Because during this exam, Nanase accompanies Ayanokoji, and at the end of their journey, she reveals her secret, that she's the childhood friend of Matsuo Eiichiro. Alright, I'ma be for real, I did not remember who that was. But back in season 2, we learned who Matsuo is. He's the son of the butler, whose life Ayanokoji's father ruined because the butler helped Ayanokoji escape to the school. Tsukishiro then recruits Nanase to go against Ayanokoji, painting this picture that she'll get justice for her childhood friend. And all of a sudden, Nanase awakens a split personality, taking on the consciousness of Matsuo to defeat Ayanokoji. Yeah, things get really weird. However, even with that, it's not even close. I'm pretty sure Ayanokoji's exact words were, "At your level, even if you kept this up until the day you died, you'd never be able to hit me. Not even once." And he basically beats her by tiring her out. After the confrontation, Nanase gives up, admitting that it isn't Ayanokoji's fault for what his father did. And to make up for all the trouble she put Ayanokoji through, Nanase would drop out of the school. However, Ayanokoji deems it completely unnecessary, so instead, Nanase becomes his ally, his loyal knight willing to follow all of his orders. Alright, so at this point you might be thinking, alright, this is cool, the split personality, did not see that coming, but it isn't any better than the hidden plot. Why is Nanase at number 1? That's how I felt too, until I realized that every single thing I told you so far about Nanase is a complete lie. Nanase wanting to avenge her childhood friend? A lie. Nanase having a split personality? A lie. Because at the end of Volume 0 that goes into the history of the White Room, we learn that Ayanokoji's father does not want him expelled from the school. In fact, it was Ayanokoji's father's plan for him to come to the school, and the whole story about the butler was a complete lie. Chances are he actually told the butler to guide Ayanokoji here. And this is the moment where Nanase's story draws you in. Because from the beginning, she was lying to us. You even have her go on in monologues like, "I wonder if I'm able to cross blades with them." Nope, that's not important. He's definitely a person I have to defeat. She's clearly talking about getting revenge for Matsuo. There's even an entire POV chapter where Nanase describes the day Matsuo died. And then there's that whole split personality thing where she uses another pronoun. All of this context was to lead us into a false sense of security where we thought we had Nanase figured out. What does this remind you of? Who else has done this in the series? That's right, Ayanokoji. In the first few volumes of Classroom of the Elite, Ayanokoji completely fakes his personality, taking on the persona of a normal high school student. And he fakes everything, even his monologues, so we as the reader couldn't even tell fakeness from reality. But between the lines, he always dropped hints of there being something else there, even in the first few volumes. And the crazy part is that he confirms that he played a character in the same exact volume where Nanase was introduced, leaving us a clue that she's entangled in a similar type of mystery. And the second clue is when it comes to the pronouns, because in the translation notes of the volume, I found something insane. I can't get into the weeds of this because I don't understand Japanese. But the gist is that there's a unique way that Ayanokoji writes his pronoun. And Nanase is the only other character in the series that does it in the same exact way, emphasizing that there is a link between them. And on top of even that, Ayanokoji has a very strange but unique robotic way that he goes about his monologues. And reading through a bunch of Nanase's short stories, she goes about things the same exact way. Because she's gonna say things like, students from all the years are inhabiting the same grounds at this school. There are no adults nor children to be seen. I was yet again reminded how special this environment is. Will it be possible to live a calm and relaxed life here? I wonder. Alright, I'm gonna fully admit that this is a vibes-based analysis, but if I didn't tell you that was Nanase, there's no way you're differentiating between that and Ayanokoji's earlier monologues. They're very similar. So from the beginning, the author laid out clues for us to follow, that there's something strange about Nanase. And believe it or not, this gets even deeper because I was so entranced by this, I just went back and started rereading every single section. And I found something ridiculous, that there are clues laid out by Ayanokoji that he knows about her fake persona. One example is when Hosen stabs Ayanokoji. He says, at any rate, even after seeing the aftermath up close, Nanase didn't seem fazed in the slightest. He then again goes on to say, despite the fact that there was a knife pierced through my palm and blood scattered around, she was perfectly calm and composed. Okay, it's a bit weird that we're still on this, but he goes again. The visually intense, graphic nature of the scene didn't affect her at all. This was the moment I started realizing like, oh, Ayanokoji knows. So from that moment on, each of their interaction became a cat and mouse game to see how much one can deceive the other and how much the other can figure out. I don't think I need to go into much more detail why Nanase is number one. By far the most interesting story out of any characters introduced in the second year. And the thing I'm looking forward to the most in season 4 is to see if any of this actually translates onto the screen. Now, I know people's hope in the anime is... What hope, bro? There's no hope here. I was gonna say some line, but I can't even pretend. The anime is not well received by the book readers, but in the second season, they did include some hidden plot stuff. Like for example, there was this entire hidden plot figuring out that Kushida was the one who betrayed Class D even before she did it. And one of the main moments in that was the scene where Ayanokoji and Kushida hug. It was really her trying to get his attention away from the scene because Ruin was in the background. So honestly, hey, let's flip the coin. Let's see if any of this stuff makes it in. And believe it or not, since this is a tier list video, I had to use every morsel of my willpower to make sure that I don't make this video 5 hours long. I'm gonna tell you, I cut out so much of the story that I wanted to talk about that it is eating me away inside. So I plan to make solo videos for some of the girls on this list to just accompany this video and go through their entire story. So we're gonna go through volume 1, 2, 3, and 4, everything that's gonna cover season 4. And I will link that here as soon as it's done.